We are figuring this stuff out. I've been using Starship for many years now, and I never knew about the explain command.
I set up another Fedora image, so I can actually install Firefox here. This thing will eventually just run as usual because this container has access to my display socket. You know cmatrix?
No?
There you go.
Oh, wow.
I include the mise.toml config file and generate a hash for it, which makes this file different every time I update my configuration, essentially, which will do a mise install.
Oh man, I'm so glad that we did this.
One of the things that you see here is Starship. I got fed up with mise.sh. It became slow and there are too many options to tweak. So Starship is essentially a sort of a re-implementation of it in Rust, single binary again, very adaptable. As you can see, super fast. And so if I go into a different folder, it shows it.
Yeah, just 1 second. I've been using Starship for many years now, and I never knew about the explain command. Seriously, that's such a good one. Starship explained. That's amazing.
Oh,
okay.
This I learned about this because I think I was having trouble with the gcloud part of it. It was just taking too long, and I had all the plugins enabled, of course, and it just couldn't figure out which one it was. And well, it was very apparent once I figured out what Starship explain actually did.
That's really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm stealing that.
This isn't the default theme. I just like the
what theme is this?
Yeah, I'm trying to. This is the Cat Pachin.
Okay.
Cat Pachin color theme. Almost anywhere that I go, I try to find it. It's soft. It still has quite good contrast most of the time. And I just decided to go for a single unified theme across everything, so I don't have any other choices to make, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
This is Bluefin. This is my machine running Bluefin currently. And the interesting thing about Bluefin is that it's essentially immutable. There are only a couple of parts of the system that are mutable, and that is, I think, etc and var, I believe. My home folder actually lives in var home because it just gets remapped. And whenever I think once a week they release a new build and it automatically downloads. So you just have to reboot, and it reboots into that build, and all of your software is updated.
Oh, really?
It's very nice. It's this really makes me less afraid to just play with my systems. Because I know I'm just a reboot away from getting going again.
Yeah.
Now, these days I don't really need to mess with my system a lot because either I start a container like with Podman, or even use libvirt to start VMs, which I also don't do that much anymore. But those are the main ways I isolate my experiments, basically.
Okay. Yeah. So what can you run in a container? Obviously, you can run like various processes, but can you run applications or something like that in a container? Is that possible?
Yeah, so like the default, of course, is when people do, let's just use Docker. People know this a bit better. Of course, you can do like dnf install Firefox, but this will work. The installation will work, but you'll never be able to run Firefox unless you expose the proper graphics devices or give it specific permissions. There's this other project. It's called Distrobox, and essentially it is a wrapper around Podman. And it will create a container with the proper permissions to be able to access pieces of hardware that you'd like to access. And the matter of fact, this video stream that you see here is running from a Distrobox called gphoto, because I have to use the gphoto binary to make my Canon camera stream video, and I'm streaming it into a virtual video device that lives on my system.
Man, that's crazy. And then that virtual device, that's what actually gets streamed, right, outside, because you are streaming the camera to that device, and then that device is streaming the video out.
Yes, exactly. And the virtual camera that you're seeing now is by OBS, of course, which is running in its own Flatpak environment, which is another form of container isolation. But these things are all sort of linked together through my host system. But these processes don't know of each other. They can't see each other, really.
That's crazy that you can isolate things like this. I mean, I wouldn't have never thought that you can control the hardware and basically change the way the hardware behaves in this way.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The one thing that you really need to remember in this entire jumble of containers and other types of virtualization, everything is just a process. It might be a process with limited views into the rest of the world, but it's just a process.
That's right.
And once you realize that, it's very, very easy to sort of navigate between all of these little universes. Hi, Cat. So what you just saw me do was start a new Distrobox. And as you can see, it sets up all kinds of little things. And you can even tell it to start its own systemd instance. So you'll have full-on systemd background or process management. And I set up another Fedora image, so I can actually install Firefox here. This thing will eventually just run as usual because this container has access to my display socket. While this is running, we can actually try and see how this thing is mounted. And as you can see here, there are quite a lot of host binds. For example, my home folder is automatically mounted, which is why my terminal, my prompt looks exactly like it did on the outside.
That's nice.
Yeah, and some other things are happening here. This is the command that actually created the container, and as you can see, it's using IPC host and network host, which means it has direct access to all of my network devices. Now we're just running Fedora, and as you can see, it's in default mode. It's showing me all kinds of little startup things, and this is completely separate from my own Firefox instance. Anybody who says I can't do firmware development or something else with hardware in containers, it's just not true. You can do just about anything.
Yeah, that's really cool. Obviously, you'll have the same kernel. So if you depend on kernel modules or things like that, that's not going to work.
Yes. That is the one thing that makes this stuff a little bit tricky, because sometimes you want to launch a kernel module to have, I don't know, password cracking acceleration or whatever, right? But then you find out that, a good example is VirtualBox. So VirtualBox requires a kernel module to be compiled and loaded for it to be able to run virtual machines. I cannot build that on this machine outside of a container because I don't have access to the proper headers, and then Linux kernel headers. But then if I find a distro that actually has them, the kernel that's loaded is not the same as the actual headers that distro has access to. So I'll probably will never be able to run VirtualBox on this system on the current kernel version, which is a shame. But then again, I never liked VirtualBox. I just use libvirt for everything, really.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Now, there's one thing that you were showing me in the rehearsal that I would love us to see.
Oh, yeah. No, of course. Oh, that was the original, the OG version. Yeah. So so just to further drive the point home that I actually have access to graphical hardware is the xeyes program, which I don't have on my local machine. But if I enter this one, no, it's actually probably not installed on this either. There we go. This is one of those classical little tools that will help you check if your graphics card is actually, working as expected. And this is running inside of a container.
That's really cool. I think xeyes, it's worth trying this thing out just for this. Just so you can see, we need like an extra pair of eyes to look at our code. And you can just do this. This is really cool. Very nice. Okay. So,
it's one of those stupid things. Like cmatrix, cmatrix?
No. No, tell me.
Yeah, it's exactly what you think it is.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a nice screensaver, I have to say. Very, very nice.
It is.
Okay.
I think I used to have a screensaver like this back in the Windows XP
Yeah,
days.
I remember that. But now this is like
Mhm.
in your terminal. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Okay. Any other fun tools that you want to share or utilities?
Utility wise, oh yeah, like my own dev container setup or my dotfile setup, of course, contains all of the tools that I use generally. I think the best way to show this is also to make a tiny introduction into dev containers as well,
Yes.
because essentially, I mean, let's git init, make it work, and just jump in there. If I would run like devpod up right here,
Yes.
it'll try and figure out what type of project it is, and it will find nothing, of course, which I think makes it default to Ubuntu. Yeah, it does. And what it created is a dev container JSON file containing just this is the bare minimum of a specification that you can have.
Yeah.
And if I devpod SSH into this container that's now running, my terminal immediately changes, and I can show that we're running Ubuntu 22.04 in this case.
Yeah.
Now, as we said before, people don't like working in somebody else's environment. So you can build out this dev container to have exactly all the tools that you require for this project to work, but it will be void of any personalization, any of the shortcuts that you want to have. Generally, like the amount of time I see people do like what was it, GL for git pull, or GPL,
Yeah.
or just K for Kubernetes, right? In an environment like this is just painful. So this is where dot files come in, and you can implement dot files in whatever way that you want to have. Usually, it's just a collection of these files in Git that you just git clone and then manually copy over the files into your home folder in the proper locations. Or you can use a tool like Stow, which creates symlinks. I used to use Stow quite a lot. It's a pretty old tool. But eventually I found chezmoi, which is also a single binary that has some nice templating utilities, and it can execute scripts in different stages of the system. The very cool thing about dev containers, or actually most implementations of dev containers, not everything supports this, is that you can actually point it to a .file repository. And let's try and do that. So I just exited it. I'm going to recreate this container, and I'm pointing it to git at github.com/rio/dotfiles. And it will ask me to touch my YubiKey, or actually unlock it first. And what this does, it will actually clone that repo. It will search for any of these files, and it will, in my case, it found one, and it will simply execute it. That single setup script will install chezmoi, which will then take over from there. So it will move my .zsh in place. It will move my mise.toml in place. Mise is a tool that I use to install all of my other tools, essentially, that you can see running here.
Oh, wow.
And eventually it's done. And once I jump into this dev container again, it'll look exactly like my home system.
That's really cool.
This setup can be made aware of which operating system that you're running, which architecture that your CPU is using, and you can template things out to make it work on every system that you have running. For work, I sometimes have to switch to an ARM Mac. Same system works. The framework desktop that I have right beside me, the first thing I do is git clone that repository, run the setup script, and I'm back in business. Because this thing will also install devpod, for example.
Wow.
It's very liberating.
I would really love to see that. I mean, let's say it's not ready for the public, but if it's ready for me, I would love to have a look at it. Seriously. This is so cool. This is so cool.
Sure.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean,
I
just
can
to double check,
show you
.files is not public, right? Just double checking. It's a private repo.
Yeah, it's a private repo. It is the default repo that most tools look for. If you tell it to install .files, it will go to your GitHub username /.files.
Yeah.
So that's definitely not a secret. But there are plenty of .files that you can find all around the web of people exposing it.
Yeah. I think it's more like how you structured it, how you wrote like your setup.sh. It's like the building blocks, because then this comes the customizations. But having a starting point, I think, just makes things so much easier to try out.
I can definitely show you how I use mise to get all of these basic tools installed. One of my favorites is ripgrep.
Yes.
Just a faster grep, right?
Yeah.
It's not installed by default by anything. So if I go into this dev container, into the home folder, which by convention is actually VS Code. I don't think it's standardized, but most is VS Code. Config and then mise. I have a config.toml, and this is really it. This is all I have to do to get all of these tools installed. And for my home stuff, most of the stuff is just latest because I just want to be on top of everything.
Yeah.
But I use the same mise tool to install tooling for the projects that I run, and then I lock everything down.
This makes a lot of sense. I mean, I have been playing with mise a few days ago in preparation for this, just that I have an idea of how it works. It was surprisingly simple. What I used to do, and even to this day I still have, is a make file. But I had for maybe 10 years now that I've been improving ever so slightly, which because I'm in the Apple ecosystem, I have it on my iCloud. So whenever I set up a new machine, this gets automatically pulled down. I run the make file and everything is set up the same way. Now the problem is it's very Mac specific. And now there's more and more Linux workstations that I'm working on and Linux environments, which needs a slightly different approach. So I need to make slight changes to that. And this seems to be a great way to capture everything. So mise seems like to be the modern tool. Like all these versions seem to be great. I mean, obviously there was Homebrew, and I've been using that for a long time. Yeah, Homebrew on a Mac. So that's where it started. Now I know it's available on Linux. But this seems to be a much better system, I have to say, much simpler system.
Yeah. Homebrew is actually installed by default in Bluefin. So I can actually run brew and it'll work. They actually recommend you using brew and flatpaks to install any custom tools that you want to have and not touch the base OS, just to make like upgrades a lot easier. Otherwise you have to start, maintaining your own OS, and that's exactly what you want to avoid here. The problem I had with brew is that I create and destroy dev containers, I don't know, maybe 100 times a day. And brew is just very slow.
Yeah.
Mise is very fast. So, at some point, especially when I could start using it for replacements for dir env, for example, to set environment variables or trigger certain commands. I just started using it more and more.
Yeah, that's really cool. What about your setup.sh? Any chance we can look at that to see what's there?
Well, it's super simple. So let's see. Chezmoi installed. Yeah, I can do chezmoi cd. It actually dumps me into the .file repository that by default in a dev container setup will be cloned in this location. But if you do it on a normal machine and you do chezmoi init apply and then your GitHub username, it will end up somewhere in, I think, .local.share. And it's super small. It's very simple. Like my setup.sh, basically, well, first it checks if xeyes is installed and sets the default to xeyes.
Yeah.
If it finds chezmoi on the system, it will immediately just use that chezmoi to apply the current source. If it finds mise on the system and not chezmoi, it will use mise to install chezmoi and then install everything. And then as a very last measure, it will directly use the chezmoi installation script to apply everything.
That's beautiful.
It's very, very small. Yeah. And all the way at the end,
there's something very subtle that happened in the previous command that I think most missed. And that is cat is actually an alias for bat. Because what you're seeing here is the bat output. So if you think, how does this cat look so good? It's because it's bat. Yeah,
cat is bad.
Very nice.
That's one of those other tools that I really like, along with LSD, which I think is a continuation of the exa command and essentially a replacement for ls. Yeah,
That's
it's very
really cool.
very cool. It has a lot of nice things. This is the entirety of my setup, by the way. It's not super big. Most of these things can actually go away. But the one thing that really binds this together is mise. So here you can see the config mise config.toml. It's the same file that you saw before. And if we list hidden files, there's a .chezmoi scripts that has a run on change after install and then just a random name .tmpl, and that template is important because the only thing it does, this is a trick I copied from Helm actually. I include the mise.toml config file and generate a hash for it, which makes this file different every time I update my configuration, essentially, which will trigger chezmoi to rerun this thing, which will do a mise install. It's super simple, but it works very well because it's essentially a two-stage setup. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm so glad that we did this, that we finally got together. I've learned so many new things, and it just inspired me to just push it a little bit further. So chezmoi, for example, I've heard of it, but I've never tried it. Mise, it took me a few years to finally try it. It was, again, just a few days ago, and I really liked what I've seen. But the way you're putting things together in this way is just like the next level stuff, like the nice packaging and automation and distribution. And I can imagine how well this could work for teams as a starting point, common starting point.
It definitely does, because I mean, remember, we're still in our make it work folder. We don't have anything. But for example, we want to have access to a standard set of tools like and of course, we will pin the version of these tools because that's proper etiquette. We need kubectl, of course. We will need K3D to provide a cluster, K9S to look into the clusters, right? You just press enter, and it'll do its thing.
That's beautiful. And even the UI
it's
is
really
nice. I've been using ASDF for years, but this is just so much better than ASDF. I want this, is what I'm saying. I want this.
I can tell you, mise, I think backends, these are the backends that mise supports, including ASDF. So you can just reuse all of those tools.
That's really cool.
Yeah. One interesting one that I want to point out is UBI. So it actually stands for the Universal Binary Installer, I think. If you use UBI, you can actually give it a GitHub domain or a GitHub repo. For example, cube vert/cube vert. And it will try and figure out which binary in the releases page matches your machine the best, and it will download it. And we'll just manage it just like any other mise tool.
Can we see that?
It works very well.
If you run, what happens? I have one.
Yeah, sure.
Dagger.
Oh, cool.
Let's see what it does.
Let's see.
Oh man, that's really good.
Well, there you go.
Wow.
And it shows up in your mise.toml. Remember, this is a different mise.toml from my own, but they will both work. They both complement each other. And if I have duplicates, for example, K9s in both versions, depending on where I am in the system, it will use the other one.
This is really cool. So what about something like a database? For example, if you need Postgres, how would it handle that?
Yeah, no clue, because I use containers for that, right?
I see. Okay.
And in that case, actually, you could, of course, use Dagger to launch all of these backend services.
How do you run databases? So you mentioned containers, but how do you capture what should run, where it should run? Do you use also dev container, and do you just add more stuff there, or Docker Compose or something else?
Usually I ship with 2 versions of a setup. One is pure local development with Docker Compose, because most people still understand that like pretty easily. It's a simple format to figure out. And it's generally a lot lighter than running Kubernetes locally. And I will ship a version that uses Kubernetes to launch as many of the production services as possible, maybe with like no anti-affinity rules or less replicas, for example. You can go into the choice of just running all the pre-built containers of your local project as you would in production, or you go into a development loop. So usually it's the choice between Docker Compose or Kubernetes locally.
Okay.
It's pretty hard to choose which version to do when, because I'd love to reuse all of the Kubernetes manifests, for example, in Docker Compose, but that's simply not doable. Podman tries to do that, but it's not as complete as just running Kubernetes.
When you have a development loop that uses Kubernetes, what do you use for example, reloading, live reloading, making changes, or propagating changes from local all the way to what's running in Kubernetes?
Yeah, that's been a journey as well. I mean, you can of course do something like fd for find all my Go files, something like this. Not sure if this is the command, and then pipe it into enter, which will watch those files and then trigger the following command every time. In this case, it could be kubectl copy, and then whatever file you just changed into the pod that you want to put it in on /app wherever.
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it, like very Unixy. But there are other tools.
Yeah. Anything that you've used and you had a good time?
Scaffold has been one of my go-tos, definitely. I've been playing with Tilt for a while. The downside of Tilt is that it requires quite a lot of configuration to get Tilt to recognize all the resources and etc. And it's been working okay. There's still a lot of improvements to be made in these systems.
Yeah.
And I haven't found the one I really like. Like Scaffold is simple, single binary again. Tilt is more comprehensive. It has a nice UI, which means that project people will probably use it a lot more. That's usually the main reason I choose a particular piece of software, not is if it's actually going to be used by the project members or not. We started this dev container journey, right? So we've been using mise, and of course, one nice thing is to make this thing work for other people. So if you remember, we have this .dev container JSON. You can actually also have a .dev container folder, and if we move that JSON in there and call it dev container.json, and at the same time, let me start my multiplexer. There we go.
We've seen a lot of tools, and I think it's so easy to nerd out on these. But ultimately, we're doing this in the service of others, right? So it's easier for others to maybe jump in a project or help out with things. So when it comes to the people perspective, right, how people come together on a team, because you work with so many teams and you've helped so many teams and continue doing so, what do you see teams often miss?
Really thinking about what your project is going to require from others. I'm usually on the receiving end of this, of course. Like at some point, somebody says, oh, so when is that AWS account ready or something? And then I recall a conversation 3 weeks ago that they said, like, we're not going to use AWS. And then somewhere along the line, new requirements pop up and not the correct people aren't informed of what is required. And like in the worst case scenario, you'll be a bad guy sort of blocking the entire project. In the best case scenario, they're like, oh, sorry, we should have told you this sooner because we know that you also want this project to succeed. It's again communication. Like sometimes when people ask me what I do, especially when I was consulting, it's like, yeah, sure, I do computer stuff. I know these programs. I know what a container is. But eventually, it's usually getting one team to talk to the other team. And that's the one thing that the entire DevOps movement always tries to promote, like breaking down silos, getting these people to work together. And it's still a problem. It's never really gone away. But sadly, the term DevOps has been reused to mean everything that has CI, which isn't really isn't covering it at all.
Yeah. What makes, in your opinion, good communication?
Asynchronous communication is definitely not bad. Like if you have some sort of Slack channel, just do a daily thing of like, hey, I noticed this stuff. I think we need to change the way we do our CI or the way we test things. Or we have a blocker because AWS Bedrock is slower than calling Anthropic directly. Like the people who are in those channels and know that they have to be involved when it comes to these areas, they will probably notice, right? They might have alerts for certain keywords set up, so that will definitely help. The other thing that I find that works really well for communication and learning together is pair programming. It can be quite taxing depending on what your chemistry is with the other person, or maybe there's a very large skill level difference between the two. If there's one way to go fast, it is to have two people work on the same problem, because you can basically forgo the pull request review by a human, because that human has been working with you like the entire time. On top of that, you now have an LLM that can find all the stupid bugs that humans can't find, for example, or just overlook easily. That's also a form of communication, I feel.
What about RFCs, RFDs, specification documents?
Yeah, ADRs. ADRs are great in my opinion. It requires discipline. I wish I had more discipline, but the nice thing is,
don't we all?
Yeah. The nice thing with this LLM boom is that people are now creating files for Claude Code or Copilot or whatever they use to get the agent to work better for them. But when you look in those files, what's actually in there is the core pieces of information that any human also needs to get to work nicely, right? So if you would just maybe a little bit terser than a normal README, just put those things in a README and also have maybe a contributing.md in the repository, and just make them not too long so that the human doesn't get bored out of their mind to be like and stop reading, but also to not fill the agent's LLM context too quickly every time you ask it to do something. It's very interesting to see these things pop up, and we go back to the standard ways that we are used to work or should work when it comes to collaborating with humans. And ADRs or plans, as for example Claude Code would call it, or Gemini, are sort of the same thing. You work together with a different human to write down what you want to be done. You really think about it, and you have this soundboard, which is again another human or an LLM, to really flesh out what you want to do. And you just start iterating on that and building on that. It's the same thing, really. I'm just happy that people are rediscovering that way of working. Yeah.
Well, Rio, you gave me some very practical ideas, things that I want to try, and I thank you for that. Improving my development environment, sharing it with others, and modernizing things a little bit. I've been, stuck with Makefast for a long time, especially when it comes to configuration. Dotfiles, I skipped Stow altogether because I had basically a Makefile which would do that, like symlinking and things like that. One setup, there were a couple of approaches. I'm pretty sure I still have like a repo which is public that you can go and check out, and it hasn't changed in many, many years. So this gives me the right incentive to go and try new things out. And I need this as I'm going to be working more and more on Linux workstations, and we'll see in a minute why that is. I want to thank you very much for today, and I cannot wait for the next one because there are so many things here to unpack. Kubernetes, we haven't even touched on the thing. Talos, I can't believe it. Home Labs, LLM, how you run your LLMs. There's like so many things. I have more questions than when we started, and that's a great sign. So thank you.
Will you be going to TalosCon Amsterdam?
Unfortunately, not this year, but I will make sure I'll go next year. So my plan is to skip this year, go to KubeCon North America instead, and then next year do TalosCon, especially if I have time to submit the talk, because I didn't have time to submit the talk this year.
Yeah, I loved your talk last time. That was very nice. Just sitting in the audience and listening to you work, do your thing.
Yeah. Well, I have something coming up today, another talk that is not a TalosCon, and I invite you.
Oh, okay.
But we have to say our goodbye now for everybody else. And then there's like a teaser. But so thank you very much for joining me today, Rio. And Share Rio, I think I have the title. Share Rio. That's the title of it. From chezmoi. Share Rio. Right. That's what
I'll allow it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thanks for inviting me. It was good. Bye.
My pleasure.